Hey guys, this is RyGuyGaming here today, and today I am back with another Roblox scripting tutorial. I know, it's pretty crazy that we're doing two back-to-back just like the old days, but here we are. Today, if you can't tell from the title or what's on the screen right now, we will be updating the roleplay name or Billboard GUI or custom roleplay name, Billboard, I don't know what you want to call it. But we will be updating it to work with filtering enabled, and we will also be looking at the text filter service. So the thing about Roblox is it filters its own chat, I'm sure as many of us have noticed, so you can't give out any personal information. It filters like literally all numbers. It filters swear words, anything that is inappropriate for younger audiences. And so, but the chat is not the only way that players can interact with games. For example, like naming their character. If we did not filter the text that the players entered for their name, they could put whatever they want. They could put their password, they could put a swear word. And so we don't want that, because if that happens and our place gets reported, Roblox will shut us down. And until we filter our place, which we don't want. We want our places up so we can make Robux, and when I show you guys how to do game passes in the future, hint hint. But anyways, so yes, today we will be looking at the roleplay name and the text filtering and how to do it in this instance. There are actually 3 ways to filter different things. But today we will be looking at what they call it, the broadcast filter type. But we'll get more into those types and stuff later. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how I have this set up. So here's my screen GUI over here on the right where my mouse is. And inside of it I have the text box, which is this, and the text button. So they just type in the name they want and they click change name and their new name appears over their head. And when they spawn, they get their original name and everything. So the way this works though is we need client-server communication. So in here I have a change name remote event. And so you're going to want to go ahead and put a remote event in your replicated storage called ChangeName. And I had it recommended to me that we do a tutorial on all these different services, which we will do in the future also. So keep an eye out for that. But anyways, and then another thing you will want is 2 scripts in the server script storage. Server script storage. So you want a remote event, 2 scripts, 2 buttons, or however you want your GUI to set up, and then a script inside the button. So let's go ahead and right now we will look at the button script because it's the simplest. So the first thing we do, like we did last time, is we get the replicated storage. And if you are unfamiliar with any of this filtering enabled stuff, I recommend you watch the last video on the open closed door GUIs because I go over it quite in depth in that video. I will not be going over it as in depth in this video just because this will end up being a long tutorial and I want to save time. So anyways, just like last time, we get the event, so replicatedStorage.ChangeName, and then here I'm getting my filter event, but don't worry about that right now because you don't have this yet. So don't put a thing in called filteredText yet because it's not a remote event, it's something different. And then so we'll skip that line and come back to it in a minute when we talk about filtering text. And then right here we have the player. We get the player, just the local player, and we get the text box just for convenience. And so we set up a click event, so to get the button, you know, mouse button one down, the usual, create a function. And then we filter the text. This stuff filters the text. And then after, so after we filter the text, we set the text box to be the filtered text. So if they type in like a swear word and they try to submit it as their name, not only will their name be filtered, but it will change the text in this box to be filtered as well, just to make extra sure that we're all nice and filtered and everything. And then what we really want to worry about right now though is this event :FireServer filtered text. So just for testing this, if you don't want to, or if you want to do this with me, just change this to box.Text, because that will pass in whatever is in the text box. But I have it set to the filtered text because we have the filtering going. So now we are going to go look at the script that handles this server event and the Billboard GUI and everything. So if you've seen my last Billboard GUI tutorial, you've seen this script before, except I've made it a little longer. There is probably a quicker way to do this, but this way works just fine. So what we do is we have our usual player's child added. So every time a new player comes in, we insert a string value into that player and call it RP name, and we set the value of it to the player's name, and we just put it in the player. And then we get whenever their character is added. So this handles whenever they respawn, and inside of here is where we set up the Billboard GUI. So the first thing we do when their character spawns is we make it so that their original humanoid, the thing with their health and their name, doesn't show up. So this line here will make it so that their health and their name that normally appears over their head won't show up. Then this chunk right here creates a Billboard GUI and parents it to the character's head, and then it also, oops, I think I just dragged that over there, I don't want that. And then it sets the adornee to the character's head as well, which means that is the brick that it will appear over. And then we set its size and we offset it a little bit so it's a little higher over the character's head than it normally would be. You can change this number. It's in studs, so if you set it to a bigger number, it will be higher above the player's head, or if you put it at 0, it will be like right on their face. But that's just the Billboard GUI. It just holds the GUI. So what we really want is a text label. And so we create a text label, we put it inside the Billboard GUI, we set the text to be the name value, which in this instance is right now is just the player's name. Then we set the font size, just a couple other formatting stuff. This last little bit of stuff is kind of up to you, like the font size, the transparency, the text color, all that good stuff. You can do that whatever you'd like to do. And then here is where the name changing kind of takes place, but not really. So it gets kind of confusing here, so try to follow along. But basically this chunk right here says that every time this roleplay name value inside of the player changes, it changes the Billboard GUI's text. So it basically, that means whenever we push the button, it will change the roleplay name's value, and then it will change the name above the player's head. And don't worry, I will show you all this in actuality so you can see it. But then you'll notice down here we have a little bit of extra, and this is what handles that server fire call. So what we do here is we make we get the replicated storage and we get the event just like we did last time, and then we do on server event, so we listen for that fire on the client, and then we get the player that called the server, and we get the new name that they put into the text box, or the filtered text, depending on how you have it set up. So then we get the player's roleplay name and set the value to new name. So basically the way this works in theory is when we click the button, this script is called. And so it will filter the text, and then it will pass the filtered text onto the server. The server has already, as soon as your character spawns, put a Billboard GUI into your player that has the name above their head stored in the roleplay name. So when you change the roleplay name via that button, it calls the server, and then this function is performed, which changes the roleplay name value, which changes the text of the Billboard GUI right here. And the reason we do this is so that even if you respawn, your name will be persistent and it will always be the same until you change it. So you don't have to change it every time you respawn, which would be really annoying. Alright, now that we have that handled, now we are going to demonstrate it really quick. So I'm just going to play it because it should just work if I play it. So I will enter my role-playing name. As you can see right now, my role-playing name is... Sorry, I accidentally bumped out my microphone. So as you can see right now, my role-playing name is my actual username. And then when I click change name, it turns into the desired name. And then when I respawn in a second, it takes a second to respawn. My name is the same. It doesn't change the box text back to the name, but it doesn't really matter. Who cares? Okay, now let's go ahead and look at the filtering part of the tutorial, the text filtering part of the tutorial. So let's go back to that button code, but first you are going to want to insert a new object that we've never worked with before into the replicated storage. This object is called a remote function. It's right there, a remote function, and it's kind of similar to a remote event, but it's a little bit different, and I'm going to explain the difference to you now. So a remote event handles one-way communication between the client and the server, or the server and the client. And so basically it just is the client saying, hey server, do this, or it's the server saying, hey client, do this. Now what a remote function does is it handles communication back. It handles communication from the client to the server, but then the server sends something back, or vice versa. So in this instance, it will be the client tells the server, hey, do something, and then after you do that, tell me what you did. And that's what we want for the filtering, because we're going to say, hey server, filter this text for us, and then give us back the filtered text. And so that's what we're going to do. So after you insert your remote function, go ahead and call it filterText, and then hop back into your button script if you're coding this along with me. And so now go ahead and type in this line, which just references the filterText remote function inside of replicated storage, and we just store it in a variable and call it filter. And then inside of the mouse button event, we call the filter remote function. And the way this works is we first create a variable to store the result. So this is what the server gives us back after it filters the text. But this is where we actually call the server to filter the text. So we say filter : InvokeServer, and then we pass in the box's text. And so what the difference here is, instead of saying FireServer, you say InvokeServer. It's kind of annoying, but I guess they just did that to keep it from being confused, the difference between an event and a function. So then what I do, I can't remember if I said this earlier, so I'm just going to say it really quickly, is I set the box text to the filtered text we get back, because I don't want it to be, you know, like have a bad word sitting in the box. That would be bad. And then we pass it on, and we already went over all this. So the next script we're going to hop into is hopefully the other script I told you to make. And this script is called text filter. And the nice thing about this script is you can use it with like any kind of text you want to filter. You just have to call it like you would from the client. So you could call it from like any of the GUI buttons that you wanted to. So let's go ahead and hop into it. All you would have to do is invoke the remote function. So let's go ahead and hop into the script. The first thing we do, like always with filtering enabled, it seems, is we get the replicated storage. And then this time we also get the text service. I haven't looked a lot into it, but as far as I can tell, it seems like its only purpose is to filter text, so that's nice. Maybe it has some other uses, I don't know, I haven't looked into it that much. And then we get the remote function, which is just replicatedStorage.FilterText. And I called it fun instead of my usual event, just so we don't get confused. This one is a remote function, not a remote event. So now, these are handled a little differently from the way you would handle a normal event listener, in that it's almost like the on-server invoke here is more like a property that you assign a function to. It's not exactly like that, but it's close enough to where I'm just going to say that that's what happens, because I don't want to go into it. So basically you say your variable or your event dot server invoke equals, and then you can create a new function, or if you already have a function defined, you just put the name of the function here. But I like to keep it all cramped like this, so I just create a new function, and I have the player and text to filter parameters. And if you remember, player is passed in every time the server gets called from a client, so we don't have to worry about passing that in. But the text to filter we get from the, if you remember in the button, we passed in the box's text, so that will fill in for text to filter. Now, the next thing we do is we set up a variable, because we are going to be getting back an object from a function we're about to call. So we set up a variable and call it filteredText result, and then we say equals text service colon filter string async. And what this does is, this is what actually does the filtering, or at least kind of. What this does is it calls the text service, or it gets the text service, and it sends in the text that needs to be filtered and the user ID of the player that provided the text. And I'm not exactly sure why Roblox wants the player ID. Maybe it's because if there's too many offenses, they ban them. I don't know how it works, but you have to provide this. It's not optional. So anytime you filter text, you have to pass in the user ID of the player who created the text. And then what we get back from that is a special object called a filtered text result. It's not a string, so we can't work with it directly, but that's what we get back. So the next line is where we turn that filtered text result into a string, because we call a function on it, and we return what we get. So this return statement is what gets sent back to the client after the server is done. So what we're returning is the filtered text result, and then on the filtered text result we call a function, and it's called get non-chat string for broadcast async. Holy cow, that is the longest function name I have ever seen. But anyways, basically what this does is it gets that filtered text result, and from it creates a string that can be viewed by everybody. So I don't know if you've noticed, but when you log into your Roblox and you look up by your username, I think I have mine up right here. Yeah. and you look up by your username, you'll see mine has a 13 plus because I'm older than 13. But some players aren't older than 13, and so they need a little more filtering than everyone else. And so there are different filter types depending on who is going to see the message. So this one, when you call this one, this means that everyone is going to see the message that you will be filtering. So the filter is a little extra strict so that everyone can see it and nobody will get offended and nobody will get banned and no places get reported. And so that is why we have to use this function instead of one of the other two. You can find the other two functions on the wiki. One of them has to do with chat and the other one has to do with non-chat text, but will only be seen by like other players. By one other player, and those can be catered directly to a specific player's content filter. So if I wanted to create a GUI that sends private messages, I could tailor the filter to work with the player that I was sending the message to. So maybe if they had the 13 plus filtering, they could see a little more than someone that didn't have the 13 plus filtering. And so anyways, so we return the string back to our original button here, and that's what's stored in the filtered text. Then, like I said, we change the text box's text, and then we and then we fire the server and do all the stuff we've already talked about. Now, here is the kind of crappy thing about this. You cannot test this in the studio even if you start a server, because for some reason it just doesn't go through Roblox's text filtering service when you are in the studio. So sadly, you have to upload your place, and that's why I had this page pulled up, because we are going to go ahead. I went ahead and uploaded it, and we are going to, I didn't know this, but actually Non-Builders Club can have more than one place up now, which is really cool. I didn't know that. But anyways, so what we're going to do now is we are going to test it out, because you have to have a live place to test it out. And it looks like Brooks joined in the game. But anyways, so as you can see here, if I type in something like password, which Roblox won't let you say, it filters it. So you can see the text box is filtered and my name is filtered. But if I just type in something like RyGuyGaming and I do it, then it works fine. And so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe, and if you have any problems, be sure to post a comment down below or with any future suggestions. And I will see you guys later. Goodbye.